This is Democracy Watch. I'm joined by my co-host, voting rights attorney and founder of Democracy Docket, Marc Elias. So, Marc, we've got some surprising news about the potential for another Democratic seat, this time in Florida. Can you speak about the lawsuit challenging Florida's congressional map?
Yeah, good news, right? We don't expect good news out of redistricting in Florida, but there has been a long-standing lawsuit that's been going on in Florida under that state's fair district amendments, which were put in law by a ballot initiative several years ago, put actually in the state constitution. And this litigation's been going on. My law firm represents the plaintiffs over whether or not the gerrymandered map that Ron DeSantis forced into place, whether it violates those amendments. And in the last few days, the two sides have reached a stipulation, which is an agreement on facts that really make it very likely that we will see the restoration of a Black Opportunity District in Florida for 2024.
Now, we're talking about Florida's 5th district. What happened to Florida's 5th district during the most recent redistricting process?
It got obliterated. This was a district that was held by an African-American, Al Lawson. It was historically a Black Opportunity District. When the state of Florida went about redistricting, the legislature, the Republican legislature, knew that it couldn't do away with this as a Black Opportunity District. Ron DeSantis, ready to run for president, didn't care. He forced the Republicans to enact a map that violates the state's constitution. Then he went off to Iowa, where he seems to be very unpopular, by the way.
Yeah.
And now in the litigation over this, the Republican legislature is kind of throwing up its hands and being like, okay, maybe this was a problem. And so that led to this stipulation.
Well, tell us about the agreement that was struck here. Like, were there compromises? You would assume that in an agreement, both sides did give a little. So, why did the pro-democracy side agree to this deal at the end?
Yeah. So look, this is one of these places where, you had to balance the law with being right, which is always good, with speed, the need to remedy wrongs in time for 2024. So the original lawsuit that had been filed challenged a number of districts throughout the state, including some districts that violated another provision of the state constitution that prohibits partisan gerrymandering. But the most egregious thing that everyone agrees happened in the most recent redistricting was around this 5th congressional district, which took a reliable African-American district and really just destroyed it. So the decision was made, strategic litigation decision was made to focus in on that district and to enter into this stipulation that basically stipulates that what happened in that 5th congressional district was that Black voters had a diminishment of their opportunity to elect their candidate of choice, which is directly what the state constitution prohibits.
No, I mean, we do have a lot of time between now and the 2024 election. Why kind of give up on those other things when these are virtuous fights to have?
Again, you got to balance, right? You got to balance the what you can get for the next election with what you can get for in the future. And my law firm challenged the 2011 map, okay, which was also violated the state constitution, and that litigation took 6 or 7 years.
Got it.
Until we finally won. But it wasn't until after 2018 that we actually saw a lawful map in Florida. And as the folks involved in litigating this case had to weigh, do you continue fighting on all fronts, understanding that the Republicans will drag this case out for years and years and years, or do you focus in on what is the most concrete and most palpable harm, which is the harm that these Black voters faced in the 5th district? So that was what the lawyers involved in this team in this case apparently did.
Is there still the opportunity to pursue further litigation against partisan gerrymanders and other districts that may be unfair or unfairly gerrymandered in the future after we focus on, the most important one right in front of us?
Not in this case. So, someone else could always bring, another set of plaintiffs could always bring a legal challenge. There is also a federal court case that's going on that also focuses on this map as a impermissible racial gerrymander. But for this state case, this case is now going to proceed focused on the 5th congressional district.
Okay, now we alluded to the other cases that are ongoing before. Obviously, one of those states where we're seeing this fight play out is Alabama. As we expected, we're watching Republicans having submitted a map that violates the requirements in Allen versus Milligan to create two majority black districts. What happens next?
So there was just a hearing on this, and I got to say, the state of Alabama showed up in its full defiant glory. They showed up in court and were like, "Yeah, we don't want to create a second majority black district, so we didn't." And we think that essentially the plaintiffs in this case should have to start all over in proving that there even is a violation of the Voting Rights Act. Those arguments just took place. I don't expect they're going to go anywhere. As I've said before, at the end of this rainbow is a court-drawn map, and that's what we're going to wind up with. And is that the three-judge panel that struck down the first map, and have lived this case, have been vindicated by the U.S. Supreme Court. I strongly suspect that they are going to wind up imposing their own map. They hired a special master, who is basically an expert to draw maps, and I expect that they will ask that person to draw a map.
Now, are Republicans trying the same thing in Louisiana?
They're trying the same thing in Louisiana. The Republicans just don't want to comply with the law.
Right.
But yes, they're doing the same thing in Louisiana. Again, another state where they lost a Voting Rights Act claim. Again, my law firm involved in both Alabama and Louisiana for disclosure purposes. But they lost the case in Louisiana, and they went to the U.S. Supreme Court. And their argument in the U.S. Supreme Court was, "Oh, look, wait, we're just like Alabama. We're just like, Alabama in Allen v. Milligan," because, Brian, they thought they were going to win Allen v. Milligan. And when they lost, now they're like,
we're nothing like Alabama.
Nothing like Alabama. Never heard of Alabama. We are so far from Alabama. We're a totally different state. We're Louisiana, but they're going to lose there as well.
All right. Can you give an update on the prospect of a new black district in Georgia?
Yeah. So look, I've said this, I've been on record. We're going to get, there's going to be a new majority African-American district in Alabama, in Louisiana, and in Georgia. And I'm feeling more and more bullish now about Florida. In Georgia, that case has been set for trial this fall. And I expect that after that trial, you will once again, you'll have a state that will have found to have violated the Voting Rights Act, Section 2, and there will be a new African-American opportunity district in the Atlanta area.
And finally, what about Texas? What's the progress on that map?
Everything's bigger in Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas, and because it's bigger, it's more complicated. So there's just a lot more seats at issue in Texas. There are the possibility of creating new Black opportunity districts and new Hispanic opportunity districts. So that case is still lagging a little bit further behind time-wise. Hopefully that case will get resolved end of the year in time for 2024. But I would put it behind Alabama and Louisiana and Georgia and now Florida.
So what are we looking at in total in terms of new Black opportunity districts across, they're mostly collected in the South, so across these states?
Yeah, so I think one in Alabama, one in Louisiana, one in Georgia. Florida is an additional one, although it's really the restoration of one. So it's a new one, but it never should have been done away with. So that's 4. And then in South Carolina, a case we haven't talked about that's going before the Supreme Court under a different theory, a racial gerrymandering theory, there may be one there. And then Texas, we could be seeing 3 to 5.
Okay. And that's enough. Based on the fact that the margin in the House right now is just 5 seats, that is enough to more than flip that margin just on violations of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act alone. Mark,
which is the reason why, Brian, I feel like there has not been enough focus on the fact that Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, was putting calls into the Alabama legislature, essentially telling them to violate a federal court order because he knows what the math you just did, he's done. And he knows that if the states have to comply with federal law and the U.S. Constitution, his speakership is in real jeopardy.
Yeah. And do you anticipate that all of these cases will be resolved by 2024, barring Texas, which is, like you said, moving a little bit slower?
Yeah, Alabama will be, Louisiana will be, Georgia will be, and now we can add to that Florida.
Okay,
yeah, those will be done for 2024.
Well, we'll leave it there. Again, thank you to the work that you and your team have done to protect voting rights across the country, in particular in these cases where, again, like you said, you're representing the plaintiffs here. So for anybody watching, if you want to help support Marc and his team, please sign up for Democracy Docket. It's the free news outlet that Marc founded to keep you up to date on everything voting and elections. The link is right here on the screen. It's also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.